Okay, so I'm getting ready to do an Intaglio stencil. So this is another way of getting more than one color on one plate and then running it through just once instead of having to do multiple plates for multiple colors. So what I'm going to do is I've gone ahead and wiped up my etching plate. It's got aquatint and line etching on it. I've wiped it up in black ink and I've wiped it pretty clean because in this case I'm going to print this on a dry piece of paper. So the most important step to remember here is that you print it on the dry paper and not on wet. You do not want this on the wet paper. You want to make sure that it's dry because when the paper gets wet it expands and changes the size of everything that's on your print. So you want to make sure that we do this dry. So I'm going to go ahead and put the dry piece of paper over the top of this. I'm going to try and line it up so that I can get my registration marks kind of on there. I'm going to go ahead and put those crosshair registration marks on this so I kind of know where it goes and how to line it back up. Okay, so I've got all 4 registration marks on there. I'll put my up arrow on it too just so I know which way I went through the press and which way is up. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and cover this in newsprint and run it through the press. Okay, so I have my dry piece of paper that's come through the press now. So the paper hasn't been soaked, it's been completely dry. I've got my registration marks on the back, so I'm good to go. So now if I pull this off, what I'll have is a really ugly looking print, like a really kind of salty, dry looking print that doesn't really look kind of the way that you would want one to if you're really printing this thing for real. But what it does give me is it gives me a spot to cut out shapes that I can roll color over the top of and stencil through. So this piece of paper basically becomes my stencil that I'll use for my final to kind of roll it on. So you'll see here in a minute whenever I show you how to cut this out and everything. So if we're cutting out our stencil for the for this Intaglio stencil, what we'll need to do is we'll need to go ahead and I've already cut a couple of these out, but what you want to make sure you do is get a really sharp, really precise X-Acto knife and then cut bigger than the shape that you want to make because the rollers aren't soft enough to just squish down to an exact line. So you kind of want to have, you got to imagine your paper is sort of thick like this, and then the roller is going to come and it's not going to be able to get all the way down right up next to the edge. So that means you need to cut a little bit bigger to make sure that the roller gets all the way down there. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting a little bit outside the line here, and I'm kind of just cutting a little extra big to compensate for the roller. And I'm always use the cutting mat, right? Never use the table just on its own. That would be crime against humanity or something, right? We don't want that. So and so once I get it kind of cut, I can just sort of pop this out here, and then I'm going to end up with a nice sort of opening. And so what I can do is flip this over on the plate, which I'll show you in a second, and roll a color onto it, and I can make these sort of gondola shapes, whatever size that I want. And if you wanted to, you have nice little collage elements now that you can use to, glue onto another drawing or something like that. And if I wanted to, I could even cut out, let's say this umbrella shape here, and I'll go ahead and do that really fast. And just basically, again, we're cutting bigger than we want the actual shape to be, so that it's so it gives us lots of space for the roller to kind of do its work. And then the softer roller you can find over there, the better for doing this Intaglio stencil kind of technique. So, but again, hopefully this will be awesome because it'll help you get more colors than you would have been able to get with just one run through the press. Okay, so we're at the stage where we're going to do the stencil now. So I've inked up my plate in black and wiped it real nicely, just like I would for any other Intaglio print. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my stencil over the top, and that's where these sort of crosshair marks have really, they really help a lot. And so I'm going to make sure that I've got it going the right direction, and you don't want to obviously put this down wrong. And then you can actually kind of eyeball it and see if it's lined up with your image underneath. And so, but I'm going to go ahead and use my crosshair marks to try and get this thing all set up. And then this is where tape is our friend, right? We love tape. So we're going to sort of tape the, put a little bead of tape across here so that we have our, so we know that our image is kind of lining up where it's supposed to. Tune it up just a touch. And you remember I can kind of look right here and see. Okay, so I'm just gonna tape that so it doesn't move, so it holds it all down. And I'll put another little bit of tape at the bottom, kind of just lay this down flat. Okay, so now I know this is all in the right spot and it's not gonna move. So I take my roller, which I've inked up in the blue color, and I'm just gonna roll that over this. So I'm just gonna I'll do this here. It looks like I'm out of ink, so I'm gonna go re-ink that real quick. Okay, so I've recharged the roller is what we call that. I'm just gonna try and get it on there nice and flat. Again, how heavy or light is up to you. And you can kind of see when you do this that you can see that, oh, I really should have probably cut much bigger around the edges of this. So this is kind of an example. This one over here is pretty much right on, but I'm gonna have some trouble with some of the other ones, so they're kind of a good example for how, you know, how not to do things. But if you ever want to check it, you can always just pull your tape up and look and see and go, okay, that's where the blue stuff is, that's where the ink is, and versus this is where my marks are. And you could even go back and cut some more out and then roll it on there just to make it a little bit bigger so that it'll fit. But for the purposes of our demo, I'm going to leave it at that, and then we'll get our soaked paper and I'll run it through the press and we'll see what it looks like on the other side. So now we'll go ahead and we'll do the big reveal, and we'll see what it looks like after I've stenciled on some color and printed it in black as well. So we'll get the felts out of the way there, and we'll go ahead and peel our paper back. And if I wanted to do a multi-plate thing with this somehow, I would just go ahead and mark my registration marks, but since this is just a one run through the press kind of a thing, we'll see what happens. So now you can see that I've gotten the black and the blue color all at once through one run through the press. Instead of having to have a blue plate and then a black plate, I've been able to kind of maximize my labor and my effort. And you can definitely see where this stuff is too, I didn't cut a big enough chunk. This one looks pretty good. This one, I'd want to expand my lines a little bit. This definitely is not hitting where that umbrella is hitting in the other plate. And so if I wanted to combine all this stuff together, I'd need to kind of work on it a little bit more. But, that's part of what you do is you proof, and then you print some more, and you proof, and you print some more, and you sort of slowly and subtly get your print the way you want it to. If I was going to make this for real now, I'd go in and add a whole bunch of probably dry point or something like that and punch up, the line and try and make it so that it all competes with the blue, which is pretty strong. You could also make your blue more transparent by adding some transparent base to your ink. There's a lot of different things that you could do. So, but that basically gives you, this and all of Poupée give you a couple different ways to get multiple colors on one plate, as opposed to having each color have to be on its own separate plate.